Behind the Guitar is brought to you by the Martin Guitar Foundation, RCN, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Recorded live from the campus of Steel Stacks in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Ladies and gentlemen, our host, Craig Thatcher.
Welcome to Behind the Guitar. I'm your host, Craig Thatcher. On this episode, we're joined by an acoustic fingerstyle guitarist, singer, music producer, and educator, Stefan Grossman. Please join me as we go behind the guitar with Stefan Grossman. Thank you for being here.
Give me red lipstick and a bright pocket rouge, a single bob haircut and a shot of booze. Hurry down, sweet daddy, come blow my horn. If you come too late, you know, sweet dad be gone. Stop at the fashion shop, get the one that looks best. Your own sweet mama wants a brand new dress. Hurry down, sweet daddy, come blow my horn. If you come too late, you know, sweet dad be gone. Every Sunday morning, church watch me go. My wings are spread it out now, preacher told me so. Hurry down, sweet daddy, come blowing your horn. If you come too late, you know, sweet ma be gone. Red rooster said, cock-a-doodle-doo-doo. And the Richland women say now, any dude's gonna do. Hurry down, sweet daddy, come blow my horn. If you come too late, you know, sweet dad be gone. Give me red lipstick and a bright pocket rouge, a single bob haircut and a shot of booze. Hurry down, sweet daddy, come blow my horn. If you come too late, you know, sweet daddy gone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Stefan, we're so pleased to have you with us today. I was going through some things the other day, and I found a very early book that Stefan wrote. This is called Contemporary Ragtime Guitar. This is from '72. Price was only $3.95.
But look at the cover.
And look
at those guitars.
Look at well, the guitars and the young guys on the front. Boy, oh boy, that
now
was
look at that 00045.
Yeah, very
12
cool.
fret Martin.
Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started playing guitar, where you're from.
Okay, I'm from New York City, and at the age of 9, I wanted to play guitar. My brother was playing saxophone, and so my parents were very supportive, and they got a guitar from the Goodwill shop.
Oh.
And I learned how to strum chords and sing songs like Autumn Leaves, and learned how to even read music. Stopped playing when I was 11, and then I took it up again when I was 15 because I heard Joan Baez, the Kingston Trio, and the folk music, that sound interested me. It rang bells.
Sure.
And I would go down to Greenwich Village because my parents were quite leftist, and they said, well, if you want to learn how to play guitar, go down to the village. And on every Sunday at Washington Square Park, there are people picking the guitars and singing songs, etc. And I went down there, went into a shop called the Folklore Center that was run by Izzy Young. And I was thinking, well, let me see. I know how to play some chords, and I went to the records that were there. And on one set of records, a rack of old LPs, well, they were new then, LPs, there were all these white faces, white singers, whatever. And my parents had told me, get yourself a Pete Seeger record or a Woody Guthrie record. And you know, you can learn from there. So I got myself a Woody Guthrie record. And just as I was leaving, I looked at another rack of records, and there were black faces playing guitars. But what really intrigued me initially were their names. You know, you had names like Bo Weevil Jackson, whoa, Hambone Willie Newburn. And I'm thinking, with names like this, these must be great guitar pickers. And then you had the whole series of Blind Willie McTell, Blind Boy Fuller, and then the killer, Blind Lemon Jefferson.
Oh, yeah.
Which I thought, oh, when I'm finally a dad, my firstborn son is going to be called Blind Lemon Grossman.
Look out.
And then there was a record which was a bargain in a way, because on one side it had Josh White, and on the other side it had Big Bill Broonzy. And just as I was picking up this record in England, Eric Clapton was picking up the same record, John Renbourn, Martin Carthy. We all picked up that same record as our real first record that influenced us.
Bill Broonzy's.
Well, especially the Big Bill Broonzy side. And I took it home, and I was listening to Woody, and Woody was going, I've been doing some hard you know, and I said, he's just strumming just like that. But you put on, Josh sounded good, but Big Bill Broonzy, and with a name like Big Bill, and he was playing like this. Really heavy stuff, man. And then he did this, which just killed me. He said, talk to me. I want to do that. And that was it. Whoa. Yeah, when I heard that, I said, that's what I want to learn. So from that moment on, I just kept getting records after records of Black American guitar players. And at the same time, started to, at the park, at Washington Square Park, meet other guitar pickers. And then they would mention various musicians that I should listen to. And I started to try to find the records. There weren't very many records out in those days.
No, and they were difficult to find.
Very, very difficult to find.
Especially from the early, like the 30s and the 40s.
Well, the 20s and 30s especially.
20s.
And fortunately, someone said, well, you know, there's Dave Freeman. He lives on 32nd Street, I think it was. And he has a record collection of old 78s. So I called him up, and record collectors, just as there's like a guitar mafia, a blues guitar mafia, there's a 78 record collectors mafia. And what's great about them is they are so eager, happy to turn you on to different sounds. So I went up to Dave's house, and he had mainly, his specialty was the white hillbilly music that was recorded in the 1920s and 30s. But he had a large collection also on the side
of black musicians who recorded in the 20s and 30s so that he could trade those records to the collectors who had black 78s who wanted those, and they would trade their white 78s. So he turned me on to Blind Boy Fuller, Memphis Jug Band, Cannon's Jug Stompers. He even had a Charlie Patton record. And all of a sudden I was saying, whoa, again, incredible sounds, just incredible music. And they said, well, why don't you go to Bernie Klasko's house, go to Sam Charter's place. And,
Sam Charter's.
And I went to all these homes, and I would bring my tape machine and tape these records and started listening to them, and just got totally, totally engulfed. I still am. 50, 60 years later, at home, I'm still listening to the same old 78s.
It's fabulous. What a fascinating story. Play us another piece, would you please?
Sure thing. Well, I went up to Reverend Gary Davis's house because I saw that he had a record called Harlem Street Singer, and it was just dynamite. And at the park, Washington Square, a friend, Bob Fox, said, he gives lessons. And I said, really? And so I went home to my parents, and I said, I got this phone number of this blind Baptist preacher. I think he lives in the Bronx. And my parents said, oh, that's nice. And I'm going to give him a call. So I called him up, and he answered the phone, and I said, Reverend Davis, this is Stefan Grossman. Bob Fox told me that you give lessons. And he said, yeah, $5, bring your money, honey.
How old were you?
I was 15.
15.
Right, and imagine my parents. And I said, great, and he let me get your address, got his address, and then I said, see you on Saturday. And I turned to my dad and I said, Dad, I'm going up. He lived up in the Bronx on Park Avenue, which turned out to be one of the most dangerous streets in the United States. And I said to my dad, I'm going up to see this blind Baptist preacher. He's blind, Reverend. And my dad said, where? Oh, isn't that strange? I have to buy a pair of shoes up there. So he drove me up there, and Reverend Davis lived not in the apartments, which had all been condemned. They were just condemned housing with broken windows, etc. But down an alleyway where they kept the garbage cans, and up a stairs in the middle of Manhattan, or Bronx, there was a shack. And there, I knocked on the door, and Reverend Davis opened and said, come on in, Stefan. And that was the beginning of an odyssey that hasn't ended till today. And he would ask you, what would you like to learn? And I just said, everything. And he said, well, we'll start off with an easy tune. And the first thing I learned from Reverend Davis was he only played with his index finger and thumb. And I said, wow, that's strange. Most people I saw played with at least 3 fingers, thumb, index, middle. I said, why do you just play with index and thumb? And he said, that's all I need.
Good answer.
Good answer. So this is the first song that he used to teach students.
It's a song about a candy man, and a candy man's a pimp. And this is a conversation between the candy man and his prostitute woman. Well, it sounds a little bit risque, doesn't it? But in '67, I went to England, and to my horror, I heard English musicians playing this. Bert Jansch, John Renbourn, even Donovan. And they had turned it into a children's lullaby. Very British. Took my gal to the candy stand. She fell in love with a candy man. Took my gal to the candy stand. You know, she fell in love with a candy man. Took my gal to the candy stand. She fell in love with a candy man. Wish I was down in New Orleans sitting on a candy stand. Run and get the pitcher, get the baby some beer. Said run and get the pitcher, get the baby some beer. Run and get the pitcher, get the baby some beer. Run and get the pitcher, get the baby some beer. Run and get the pitcher, get the baby some beer. I said, run and get the pitcher, get the baby some beer. Give anything in the God Almighty world, see my candy man home. I'm a candy man. You know, I'm a fattening hog. I'm a candy man. You know, I've been here and gone. Candy man, salty dog. I'd give anything in the God Almighty world to see my candy man home. And once you could play this, Reverend Davis always wanted to stay a few steps ahead of you. So I say, all right, you're playing it all right. Well, let's see if you can do this. Took my gal to the candy stand, you know, she fell in love with a candy man. Took my gal to the candy stand, she fell in love with a candy man. Took my gal to the candy stand, she fell in love with a candy man. Give anything in a mighty world, see my candy man home.
Oh, yeah.
Candy man.
Well, you have a beautiful guitar. You have a signature series guitar. And to maybe describe a little bit about your guitar, let's turn this over to our good friend and internationally recognized guitar genius, Mr. Dick Boak.
Well, I had the great honor of working with Stefan Grossman on this special signature model HJ38 guitar. There's some roots, like there is with music, there's some roots with this guitar. When we started talking, he gravitated toward this, which is a jumbo, and we had a very similar experience where a 1930s, 1940s archtop guitar had been damaged that was retopped with a flat top acoustic top like this. And many folk musicians and fingerstyle blues guitarists really gravitated towards it. Jorma Kaukonen is one of them, our good friend from Fur Peace Ranch, from Jefferson Airplane, and Hot Tuna. This guitar is a beautiful, beautiful rosewood, Sitka spruce top, perfect guitar for fingerstyle blues.
Stefan, you were involved with jug band music.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. Again, that derived from going to Washington Square Park. So when you would go there, and music was only played on Sundays from noon until sundown, which was basically about 6 o'clock. And there would be little groups of musicians playing, and one group might have bluegrass, another group would have old-timey, another one might have blues, another one folk music. And you'd be playing and you'd sort of circulate amongst all these different groups, and you obviously made friends with a lot of other guitar pickers, banjo pickers, mandolin players. But then 6 o'clock comes around and you have to go somewhere. You're supposed to go home to, you know, study or something. We didn't want to. We wanted to keep playing music. So we would either go to the fretted instrument shop that was in existence then in New York City, or Alan Block's sandal shop. Alan Block is the dad, or was the dad, of Rory Block. And we would go there, all these musicians, and you would get Steve Arkin, who was a great 5-string banjo player, David Grossman, great mandolin picker. What type of music are you going to play? What's in common between bluegrass and blues? Jugman music. You know, we all knew it. And so we would play that type of music together. And then out of that came what we called the Even Dozen Jug Band.
Even Dozen.
Which had some of the people in it, myself, Steve Katz, who went on to do Blood, Sweat, and Tears and the Blues Project, John Sebastian, The Lovin' Spoonful, David Grossman with the David Grossman Quintet, Josh Rifkin, piano player, went on to do all those Scott Joplin records on Nonsuch. Peter Siegel went on to do a lot of different folklorist music. And so there was some great musicians in this group that went on further to do different things as soloists or with other groups. So that was really a very lovely time because we were all amateurs and we hadn't been yet scarred by the music business. And we just play and play. And in our short career, we played, apparently, I remember only one of these performances. Twice, though, we played Carnegie Hall, we played Town Hall, and we were on the Johnny Carson show.
Oh, wow.
No? Big
Very
time,
cool.
big time.
Yeah, that is big time.
But then we had to make a decision. And the decision, William Morris Agency, they wanted to sign us up, and the decision was, do we quit college or do we become musicians?
Well, that's easy.
For you. It was a difficult, but again, because you have to remember there was the war in Vietnam at the time, too.
Better stay in
So
school.
it's better stay in school.
Yeah.
So that's when the group sort of broke up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, when did you start writing the column for Guitar Player magazine? There were all kinds of things. You had columns on fiddle tunes. You had, how many years?
Well, I think, boy, I don't even remember, 5 years perhaps, 6 years I wrote for them. And what was happening, I realized there I was collecting all this music from the 20s and 30s and transcribing these tunes as a hobby, really. I was just so involved in that's what my life existed of all this music, you know, and try to learn how to play it. Then I realized that there was something happening. The guitar was developing fingerstyle-wise during the 20s and 30s, and most of it was in the hands of black Americans, because the white players, there maybe were one or two great players in the 20s and 30s. In the 40s, you get Merle Travis and Chet Atkins, Jerry Reed, etc. But in the 20s, it was mostly in the hands of black musicians. And I was trying to learn, and as well as learn it, I wanted to communicate it, so I started writing different books about it. Then I realized that I'm living in a period where there's some great guitar players. You have Dave Laidman, you had John Renbourn, Bert Jansch, I mean, incredible musicians who might necessarily they might not be professional musicians, like Dave Laidman is one of the greatest classic ragtime guitar pickers, but he was an economic professor at Brooklyn College.
There you go.
And when I wrote my first 4 books, that gave me enough money, and again I went to my parents and I said, well, I'm going to leave America now, because at that point I was able to get out of the draft legally, and I said, I'm going to go to Europe and maybe further east, and my parents said, okay, and my mom said, we'll buy you a round-trip ticket. And I said, no, one way will do. So I went to Europe not thinking to be a professional musician at all. I had no idea what I was going to do, but the next thing I knew, I was playing guitar in clubs and concert halls, and it just escalated from there.
Would you play something else, please?
Sure. I heard this. When I heard this tune, let me tell you what happened. It was from a 1942 Library of Congress recording that Alan Lomax did. He went down to Mississippi to record Robert Johnson. But Robert had been killed 3 years prior, so he didn't get a chance to do that. But he met a couple other great pickers. One was called Son House, Son's best friend, Willie Brown, a youngster called McKinley Morganfield, who you know as Muddy Waters, and on Sadie Beck's plantation, there was a left-hand guitar picker that he recorded, and his name was William Brown. Now, William played the guitar like this, played it like a blues piano, and when I heard this, Craig, I said, I have to be able to play this. So I stayed up for 48 hours trying to transcribe this tune. And when I came out of my bedroom, I looked at my mom and I said, Mom, I can play Mississippi blues. And she said, isn't that lovely, darling? Then I thought, well, what can I do now that I can play this tune? And then I figured out, if I can play this and carry on a conversation, that'd be good. All right. So the blues started in Mississippi, but then it went up to Chicago. What happened when it was up in Chicago? How about doing something, BB?
B.B. King. Whoa. Now, I wonder what Robert Johnson would have sounded like. Maybe like this. Listen now. Okay, now it's your time to be Jimmy. Go, Jimmy. Burn those frets now.
Oh, that was fun.